In this video, I'm going to go over the different types of graphs and how to label graphs correctly. So we're going to go over labeling, bar graph, line graph, circle graph, and scatter plot. So first we'll talk about labeling. Most important is your graph should always be in pencil first. You can add color afterwards for detail, or if you have a legend because you're comparing different data. And it should always be, you should always use a ruler. So I put down my axis first, and then I label my axis, Y and X. And then I go to my scale. So the scale is the numbers or the qualities that you're using to compare in your data. And the scale should, the range should be high enough that it covers all of your data, so you're not leaving any out. And also it should fill your graph. You don't want to have your axes, up to here, and your numbers or your scale only goes to here. You're going to have this tiny little graph in this section. You want the graph to be a fair representation of the data given, and its size should do that. Then I'm going to add my titles. So I have my title, and again, the title should give some information to the reader about what the graph's going to show, and what it is they're going to, information they're going to gain from this graph. Your labels for your y-axis and your x-axis, again, should give enough information that the reader knows what these scales represent. So I could put here just height, but giving height in centimeters gives the reader more specific information. Now, this is a line graph. So in a line graph, we have points. So that is the data that we've collected and that we've plotted onto the graph, and then we've connected them with lines. So in a line graph, the points represent the facts. That's the information that you've collected and that you've represented. The lines represent sort of the estimation of what happened between these 2 points. So if we can imagine, if we're graphing someone's rate of growth, and we know that they've gone from here to here, from age 1 to age 2, yes, they have to pass through these heights to get to here. Alright, so bar graphs. This is the most common one you've probably done in class where you're comparing quantitative data, or quantitative or qualitative data. And it's done with bars, they're not touching each other, and really quickly you can just get a sense of, greatest, least, put them in order, what is someone's favorite, what is someone's least favorite. A double bar graph or a triple bar graph would be, you're comparing the same data, however, you're doing it with 2 different groups, two different subjects. So for example, if this was favorite colors, say in class 1, you can see this data here on a single bar graph, and then if it was the same favorite colors, but class 1 and class 2, you'd represent it with a double bar graph. And again, you would have to have a legend here that would show what these colors represent, which one represents class 1 and what represents class 2. Alright, so a line graph, I'm just going to go back to this one. We use it when we're talking about data over a period of time. So of course, someone's growth over the first 6 years of their life, it's showing that increase in height over the first 6 years. And again, just like bar graphs, if you can have a single line graph or a double line graph or a triple line graph, where you have you have 2 or more subjects that you are demonstrating that data. So you are comparing the same things, but with more than one subject. So we're measuring, for this case, it's Amy and Dawn's growth. So it's still height in centimeters, it's just Amy's compared to Dawn's. And again, I've added my legend over here to show that the red represents Amy's growth and the green represents Dawn's growth. Circle graph. A circle graph is used to compare data as parts of a whole. So in the other video, we talked about office visits by day of the week. This should be underlined because it's my title. I decided to create a circle graph to represent, the percentages of students that go to the office on certain days of the week. I have my legend here that shows the color coordination, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I have my percentages of the data of how many students go, my legend here. It's normally better to use a circle graph when the numbers are not so close, because when I first look at this, I think, well, there isn't one group that really stands out, so it's not really allowing me to interpret any kind of data from this representation. And a scatter plot. Scatter plots are very good at setting up a situation where you can interpret the data or make connections or correlations between data. If you're wanting to prove your interpretation, a scatter plot isn't the best way to do that, just because there's a lot of information and it isn't as explicit to the reader. This is a great way to start when you have a bunch of data that maybe covers a long period of time, or a lot of numbers or a lot of information. You can put it all into a scatter plot, so then you can then see a pattern or a trend and make that interpretation, and then take that information, go back and create another graph to then support that specific interpretation. So I took the data from the number of students who participated by period, right? So I wanted to see if there was a correlation between the period in the day and the number of students who raised their hands to participate. And so I have my scale down here, the periods of the day. The scale here is number of student participation. I probably should have gone up to 22, just because my highest piece of data is 20, so I might want to extend just a little bit past. I've labeled my axes, I have my title, and I've labeled my and titles for my axes, and then I just put on the plot. So in period 1, you can see these are the number of students, the data that I have for number of students who participated, period 2, period 3, period 4, period 5, period 6. And looking at this, I can see a pattern. I can see that, I can see a trend. I can see that it goes down from period 1 to period 4, and then it jumps back up period 5 and goes back down period 6. I can see when the least amount of participation is. I can see when the greatest amount of participation is. So I have made an interpretation by using a scatter plot with my data. I then can make an interpretation as in, period 1 and period 5 is the greatest number of participation, and then I find another graph to then support that interpretation. So here's some examples of graphs.